There is a silent architect behind every moment of your life, a sculptor that carves your reality, not with hands, but with thoughts, with beliefs, with quiet assumptions you don't even realize you are making. These assumptions, inherited like the echo of voices you never questioned, paint the sky you see each day. And so much of our suffering, our limitation, our fear, does not come from what is, but from what we assume is true. You have believed that life is hard, that love is scarce, that success is earned through struggle, and that joy must be postponed for some far-off finish line. You have believed, perhaps without ever saying it aloud, that your worth must be proven, that your beauty must be validated, that your dreams must be justified by practicality. And yet, none of these are truths. They are assumptions, fragile assumptions wrapped in the illusion of permanence. But illusions, no matter how long they've lived in your mind, can be dissolved in a single breath of awareness. The great teacher Jesus once said, "It is done unto you as you believe," and in those words lies the quiet key to your freedom. For what you assume to be possible, what you believe to be real, what you quietly expect from the world, becomes the architecture of your experience. Change your assumptions, and the world you see, indeed, the life you live, must follow. Assumptions are not innocent. They are powerful. They are prayers in disguise, spoken not with lips, but with energy. And the universe does not hear what you want, it hears what you are. It does not respond to what you beg, for it mirrors back what you assume to be yours. So if you walk through life assuming betrayal, you will meet it. If you walk assuming love, it will find you. Not because the world changes, but because you do. Let us look deeper then, beneath the surface of your patterns, beneath the reflexes of doubt, beneath the armor you've worn for so long it feels like skin. There in the silence between your thoughts lives a truth so simple, so profound, that it frightens the part of you still addicted to suffering. The truth is this: you are not bound by your past. You are not defined by what has been. You are only ever limited by what you continue to assume is true. And assumptions, like costumes, can be removed. What if you assume that you are already worthy? What if you assume that the universe is friendly, not hostile, that life wants to bless you, not test you? What if you believe that things are always working out for your highest good, even when your ego cannot comprehend how? What if you assumed every morning that love is your natural state and abundance, your divine inheritance? To the mind conditioned in fear, these assumptions sound naive, but to the soul, they are home. To the ego, they are a threat, but to the spirit, they are the beginning of awakening. Rumi, that beloved mystic, once said, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." But how can pain become healing? Only when the assumptions we have built around it begin to dissolve. Only when we stop assuming that we are victims, that life is against us, that hardship is our identity. Pain transforms when we stop assigning it meaning, rooted in fear. Every assumption is a lens, and through that lens you interpret the world. If the lens is cracked with judgment, then love appears dangerous. If the lens is clouded with shame, then joy feels unearned. But you can change the lens. You can pause and question the thought that has governed your behavior for decades. You can ask, is this really true, or is it something I've assumed because someone once told me it was? Perhaps you've assumed you're too old, too late, too broken, too ordinary. And these beliefs have shaped your posture, your choices, your hesitations. But what if they were never true? What if time is irrelevant to the soul? What if healing is not only possible, it's natural? What if ordinariness is a myth and your very existence is a miracle? When you change your assumptions, you don't just think differently, you see differently. The world begins to shift its colors. Opportunities that once felt impossible begin to whisper your name. People reflect back the love you started to give yourself. The very fabric of your reality begins to bend in response to your inner transformation. But the ego resists. It says, be realistic, be careful, don't assume too much or you'll be disappointed. It clings to the old assumptions like a child clutches a familiar blanket, even when it's tattered and cold. But the soul, oh the soul, it is not here to be safe. It is here to be free. And freedom begins the moment you stop assuming the worst. You were not born to live out a story of inherited limits. You were not born to repeat the same thought patterns that kept your ancestors small. You were born to question, to awaken, to rewrite the script. And the first line of that new script begins with a new assumption. I am not what I was told I had to be. Assume that you are the beloved of the universe. Assume that miracles are your birthright. Assume that joy is not a luxury, it is your compass. And when the mind says, but what if it doesn't work out? Smile gently and respond, but what if it does? The moment you shift your inner stance, the moment you assume your worth, your wholeness, your connection to Source, the universe rearranges itself accordingly, not out of obligation, but in resonance. You are a magnet, not for what you want, but for what you believe is possible. Change the belief, and the magnet changes. There is a Taoist teaching that says, when I let go of who I am, I become what I might be. And what is assumption if not a false identity? A mask that says, this is who I am, this is what I deserve, this is what I can expect. But the soul has no such boundaries. The soul laughs at assumptions. It knows only expansion. It knows only truth. And truth is always bigger than belief. So let your assumptions become lighter. Let them float like leaves in the wind. Let them be questioned, softened, rewritten with love. Assume that your path is sacred. Assume that your desires are divine. Assume that every setback is a setup for deeper grace. Assume that there is no such thing as wasted time, only preparation for the next chapter. And when the old assumptions come knocking, when fear says you're not enough, when doubt whispers it's too late, greet them with compassion, but do not invite them in. You are not obligated to believe every thought that visits you. You are free to choose a new story. Let that story be rooted in wonder. Let it bloom with the fragrance of new possibilities. Let it rise like dawn after a long night of forgetting. Change your assumptions, beloved soul, and you will find that life was never the problem. Your lens was. The moment you change that lens, life becomes not something to endure, but something to embrace. And from that embrace, everything is born anew. The right words arrive, the right doors open, not because you control them, but because you are finally aligned with their arrival. This alignment is not born of force. It does not come from efforting, from manipulating, from bending the world to your will. It comes from surrendering the assumptions that kept you disconnected. It comes from laying down the belief that you must always strive, always prove, always outperform the ghosts of your past. The universe does not speak in pressure, it speaks in peace. And the moment you assume peace as your baseline, life rushes in to mirror it. You have been taught that assumptions must be proven, that faith must be earned. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that what you assume with deep conviction becomes the soil from which reality grows. It is not arrogance to expect goodness, it is wisdom. It is not delusion to trust the path, it is intimacy with the unseen. You are not here to hope from a distance, you are here to participate in the unfolding by choosing your inner weather. Assume light, and your eyes will find it. Assume love, and your heart will magnetize it. Assume expansion, and the walls will begin to dissolve. Life does not give you what you want, it gives you who you are in consciousness. And so the shift is not external, it is inward, quiet, seismic. You rearrange your being, and your outer life cannot help but realign in response. There is no need to wait. The moment is always now. Not someday, not after the wound is healed or the fear is quieted. Now is the only canvas life ever paints upon, and the paintbrush is your perspective. With every assumption you hold, you are adding color to your experience, muted tones of doubt or vibrant hues of trust. The choice is yours. It always has been. Consider this. Perhaps the mountain was never an obstacle, but an invitation to rise. Perhaps the silence you feared was not emptiness, but fullness too sacred for noise. Perhaps the things you assumed were curses were blessings in disguise, wrapped in unfamiliar packaging. Life speaks in paradox. Its gifts often come disguised as endings, its initiations cloaked in discomfort. But when you assume purpose in all things, you begin to receive the wisdom even in the ache. To live this way is to become an alchemist of the soul. You do not deny what happens, you transmute it. You take the raw material of experience and shape it with awareness, and the tool of that shaping is your assumption. Assume that everything is conspiring for your awakening, and even your pain will bow before that truth, not because you wished it so, but because you aligned with a higher order of perception. There is nothing passive about this way of being. It requires presence, it demands intimacy with yourself. It calls you to become aware of the silent scripts running your life and to revise them not with judgment, but with reverence. You are the author. You are the voice behind the voice. And in this realization lies your liberation. So let the old assumptions crumble, not with shame, but with gratitude. They serve their purpose. They brought you here. but they are not required for where you're going. You are stepping into a new relationship with reality, not one of resistance, but of receptivity. Not one of proving, but of allowing. Not one of fear, but of faith so deep it no longer needs to explain itself. This is the sacred rebellion, to assume love in a world that forgets it, to assume peace when chaos clatters at your door, to assume that your being here is no accident, that you are a thread in the great tapestry woven by hands wiser than your own. And so you rise not by force, but by recognition. You do not need to see the whole staircase. You only need to assume that each step will meet you as you move. You do not need the world's agreement, you only need your soul's permission. And the soul has already whispered yes. Now, walk. And as you walk, walk not in haste, but in holy rhythm, each step a declaration that you trust the unseen more than the appearances, that you lean into the invisible arms of grace more than the shifting winds of circumstance. Walk like the ground itself loves your feet, because it does. Walk like the wind carries your prayers ahead of you, because it does. Walk not as one trying to arrive, but as one who never left the sacred path. The world may call you foolish. It may scoff at your quiet confidence, your refusal to panic, your deep and unreasonable joy in the midst of uncertainty. But this is the joy of the awakened. This is the freedom of the soul that no longer waits for evidence to believe in beauty, but sees beauty because it expects to. Not out of naivety, but out of clarity. Not out of fantasy, but out of alignment with the great eternal intelligence that weaves galaxies into being and still has the kindness to rise each morning in your chest as breath. This is the power of assumption sanctified. It is not the clenching hope of the ego, it is the relaxed knowing of the spirit. It is the quiet, unwavering posture of one who has remembered that they are already held. When you assume that nothing is against you, you stop looking for enemies and begin to recognize teachers. When you assume that you are guided, you stop grasping for signs and begin to feel led. When you assume you are loved, you stop seeking permission to be, and you begin simply to be full, radiant, whole. Assumptions are not thoughts, they are states of being. And each one you carry becomes a seed dropped into the fertile soil of creation. What grows is not random. What blooms is what you have affirmed in silence over and over again. And so listen closely to your silence. What assumptions live in the background of your awareness, humming like distant music you've forgotten you're hearing? Do you assume that you are safe in this life, that no matter the waves, there is a deeper current always carrying you home? Do you assume that your worth is not measured in output, but in presence? Do you assume that the same power that paints sunsets and cradles stars calls you beloved? Because if you do, you begin to live differently. You speak slower. You look people in the eyes. You rest more. You forgive quicker. You stop guarding your heart like a wounded warrior and start offering it like a sacred gift. And suddenly, without changing your outer world, everything changes. You are no longer caught in the echo of what went wrong. You are no longer rehearsing the worst. You are no longer preparing for heartbreak, but preparing for beauty. And the universe listens. It always listens, not to your lips, but to your frequency, to your assumptions, to the quiet yes or no that lives beneath every word you speak. This is why miracles appear not where they are deserved, but where they are expected, because expectation is creation. And creation does not come from pressure, it comes from permission. Permission to trust, permission to allow, permission to stop arguing with what is and start collaborating with what wants to become. When you change your assumptions, the mind may panic. It will say, but I've been hurt before, and the soul will answer, yes, and still I remained. The ego will shout, you can't just believe things into being, and the spirit will whisper, that's the only way anything ever comes to life. Every teacher of truth, every mystic who touched the eternal knew this. Life is not what happens, it is what is allowed through consciousness. Assumption is the open door. It is the agreement we make with the divine. It is the way we say without words, I am ready to live in harmony with what already knows how to heal me. And so, begin again. Not tomorrow, now. Assume you are supported and you will begin to notice the invisible hands that have always held you. Assume you are free and you will begin to see the doors you thought were walls. Assume you are loved and you will stop searching for evidence and begin living from the truth. Let this be the moment you lay down the armor of inherited beliefs. Let this be the breath where you stop defending your suffering. Let this be the exhale where you finally say, I no longer assume the worst, I assume the sacred. And watch, as quietly and certainly as dawn, the world around you begins to rearrange itself to mirror what you now know, that heaven was never a place, it was a state of consciousness. And you are home. There is a stillness you touch when you no longer assume you must earn every breath, when you no longer rise each day under the burden of proving your existence. In that stillness, you meet the truth of who you've always been, unburdened, unconditioned, unbound. You begin to live not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. And in that remembrance, your steps soften, your gaze deepens. Your life becomes less about the chase and more about the grace of simply being. You see, every assumption that you carry is like a script handed down through generations, some loving, many fearful, and without questioning, you recite them. I must struggle to be worthy. I must be chosen to feel valuable. I must succeed to feel safe. But these scripts were not written by the truth of your being. They were written by those who forgot theirs. And now, in this moment of gentle clarity, you are invited to lay them down, not with rebellion, but with reverence. They served their time, they taught you contrast. But you are not bound to continue the story of fear. Assume now, beloved, that your presence is enough, not because you've done everything right, but because your being itself is an echo of divinity. Assume that joy is not a rare reward for perfect performance, but a natural rhythm your soul wants to remember. Assume that the more you align with truth, the less effort is required. Because truth has its own momentum, it does not need your struggle, only your surrender. This surrender is not a giving up, it is a giving over of the reins, the control, the tired habit of believing you must carry the world on your back. You were never meant to bear it alone. The same force that turns seeds into forests and embryos into humans is orchestrating your becoming, but only when you assume that such intelligence loves you, not judges you, that it supports you, not tests you, that it moves through you, not around you. When you live from that assumption, every moment becomes a prayer, every gesture becomes sacred, washing your hands becomes a baptism, sitting in stillness becomes communion. Speaking from the heart becomes prophecy, because life is no longer something to fix it, it's something to witness, to flow with, to trust deeply even when it doesn't look like you thought it would. The assumptions of fear are built on the past. They are stitched together by what didn't work, by who walked away, by what broke, but assumptions of the soul are drawn from the eternal. They are not based on what happened, they are based on what is always true. That you are loved, that you are guided, that you are held by something that cannot fail you, even when it looks like you failed yourself. And here's the miracle. When you shift your assumptions, the past loses its grip. You stop dragging it like a shadow into every new dawn. You stop expecting old wounds to reopen. You stop assuming that life will repeat its darkest chapters. Because something in you begins to whisper louder than memory, that was then, and this is now. Now, where a new assumption has taken root, now, where you don't anticipate loss but expect learning, now, where you no longer prepare for betrayal but open yourself to trust, and when the old thoughts come, because they will when they arrive, like uninvited ghosts asking you to assume their shape once more, you breathe, you bless them, and you say, not today. Today I choose a deeper truth. Today I remember who I am. You don't need to fight the old stories. Just stop feeding them. They fade when ignored. They dissolve when starved of belief. And in their place, new stories rise. Not from effort, but from alignment. Stories of worth, of joy, of connection, so real it needs no explanation. Change your assumptions, and you no longer wait for life to prove itself to you. You begin to live as if it already has. You wake each morning as if goodness is guaranteed not by certainty but by choice. And life, in its mysterious wisdom, begins to rise to meet your expectation. This is the dance between the seen and the unseen, between belief and becoming, between the assumption and its unfolding. And the more you trust the rhythm, the more you find yourself carried not by force but by faith. So keep walking soul first, let the world catch up. Let the old assumptions fall away like autumn leaves. Let your yes to life be louder than your fear of being wrong. And when doubt returns, as it does, remember this. The assumption that transforms your life is never the one that proves true. It is the one that brings you peace. Choose peace, and the rest will follow. ChatGPT Danoi, there is a profound shift that takes place when you no longer place the weight of your joy in the hands of circumstance. When you awaken one morning and realize that how you feel is not a verdict passed down by the world, but a vibration born within you, cultivated not by control, but by the tender audacity to choose a new lens, the lens of divine neutrality, the lens of inner authorship, the lens that no longer asks, what will happen to me, but gently declares, I know who I am, and that is enough. And so, with this new lens, you begin to see the world as it is, not as your wounds interpreted it, but as your soul remembers it. Trees are no longer obstacles to be passed, but teachers of stillness. Rain is no longer an inconvenience, but an anointing from the sky. Even your so-called setbacks start to glisten with hidden meaning, like constellations waiting to be named. The sacred was never absent, it was only unrecognized through the eyes of old assumptions. The human tendency is to brace, to contract in anticipation of pain, to prepare for the worst as if it were inevitable. But the soul does not brace, it opens, it welcomes. It expands not because it is naive, but because it knows that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal can truly harm what is eternal within you. The soul walks forward not with calculation, but with communion, with the breeze, with the breath, with the invisible guidance that turns silence into scripture and coincidence into calling. You begin to notice something subtle, yet unmistakable. The more you soften, the more the world responds. The more you release the assumption of danger, the more safety reveals itself in unexpected places. A stranger's smile, a timely song, a moment of stillness that meets you like an old friend. It was always there, but now you are available. Because now you assume that life is not against you, it is inside you, reaching out to remind you that you are never alone. There is nothing passive about this softness. This is not resignation, it is radical receptivity. The kind of receptivity that says, I no longer need to grip the steering wheel of fate. I no longer need to preemptively defend my heart. I trust the rhythm even when I cannot hear the melody. I trust the unfolding even when I cannot see the map. This trust is not earned, it is chosen, and in choosing it, you step into a higher order of living. One where peace becomes your baseline, not your reward. And what happens next cannot be scripted. For once you live from the assumption that you are carried, you begin to dance with life rather than wrestle it. You speak not to be heard, but to honor the silence behind your words. You act not to be seen, but to align with what feels deeply true. And in that alignment, the anxiety dissolves, the pressure melts. The incessant need to prove yourself evaporates like morning mist in the light of a new awareness. From this place, your desires take on a different tone. They are no longer cries of lack, but expressions of joy. No longer demands for completion, but invitations to expansion. You no longer chase the dream to escape yourself. You live the dream to express yourself. When you live like this, you become luminous. Not because your life is perfect, but because your being is undivided. People feel it. Rooms change when you enter. Not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer carry. The burden of doubt, the armor of fear, the posture of defensiveness. They fall away like old skins that serve their time but are no longer needed. You begin to walk as one who knows the sacred secret, that life is not here to test you, it is here to reveal you. That love is not something to earn, it is the atmosphere you breathe. That wholeness is not a distant mountaintop, it is the unshakable ground beneath your feet right now in this breath. And when the storms come, and they will, you do not curse them, you bless them. For you know that even the winds of sorrow carry seeds of revelation. You no longer assume that pain is punishment. You understand that it too is a portal. And in your willingness to feel it fully, you extract the gold that was hidden in its shadow. This is the alchemy of awakened assumption. And from it, a new world is born. Not outside you, but within you. A world where your peace is not postponed, where your joy is not conditional, where your worth is not negotiated. A world where you live not from fear of what could go wrong, but from love for what already is. And that love is you. And so you come to this final breath in the journey, not as an end, but as a soft return to the beginning. Not as a conclusion, but as a homecoming to the space within you that is always known, always whispered, always waited in stillness. You are not arriving anywhere new. You are simply shedding what you were never meant to carry. The assumptions have fallen like autumn leaves, gently, silently, without fanfare. And beneath them you find yourself not a version polished for the world, not a mask crafted for survival, but the quiet, luminous truth of your being. It is unbothered by circumstance. unmeasured by time, untouched by the noise of 1,000 identities. It simply is. And in its presence, everything you thought you needed to become dissolves into irrelevance. You no longer need to brace against life. You no longer need to predict its winds. You no longer need to prepare for loss before joy has even arrived. You have remembered something holy, that your inner world sets the tone for everything that follows. That your assumption is not a hope, it is a prayer, not a defense, but an offering. And that the universe does not respond to your fear, it responds to your frequency. You begin to trust with your whole being, not because the evidence is perfect, but because the trust itself is the evidence. And in that sacred trust, life begins to meet you, not as a test, but as a mirror that reflects your new assumption, that you are already whole, already guided, already enough. You walk softer now, not because you are fragile, but because you are grounded. You speak with gentleness, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the silence behind your words. You listen not to respond, but to witness. You love not as a transaction, but as your native language. And the world around you, it begins to shimmer. Not because the external has changed, but because your vision is cleared. You see the divine where you once saw danger. You feel the presence where you once felt absence. You notice that even in moments of uncertainty, something remains unshaken within you. That something is the soul anchored not in assumption, but in awareness. And awareness needs no defense, no proof, no future outcome to justify its existence. It is the truth behind every truth. There is no need to strive anymore. You no longer chase what you already are. You no longer seek validation in places that never knew how to see you. You no longer pretend that peace is a destination. You embody it breath by breath. And if the winds shift, you let them. If the world changes shape, you welcome it. If love transforms form, you bless its new direction. Because your assumption is no longer rooted in fear of loss, but in certainty of connection. And that connection is unbreakable. It is the invisible thread woven through your breath, your gaze, your being. It is the divine memory that can never be erased, only remembered, only reawakened. So you walk now not as someone trying to find the way, but as the way itself. You speak now not as someone reaching for wisdom, but as wisdom made flesh. You live now not as someone who hopes for miracles, but as someone who recognizes that the miracle is the very act of being alive, aware, and aligned. No more rehearsing disaster, no more rehearsing pain, no more preparing for a storm while the sun warms your face. You assume peace. You assume love. You assume that everything unfolding before you is sacred, even when it is silent. And in that holy assumption, you rest not in passivity, but in profound power. The kind of power that needs no stage, no applause, no armor, just presence, just breath, just this. And now, beloved, you are free. There is a sacred current running through all things, and it whispers softly to the soul, what you are waiting for is already complete. Long before your mind can form the question, the answer has been planted in your heart. Long before your feet begin to move toward the horizon, the destination is present within you. The world may condition you to believe in lack, in delay, in striving as virtue, but the Spirit knows a deeper truth. The Spirit knows that when you align with your true essence, all things conspire to fulfill themselves through you. So assume it's done, not as wishful thinking, but as divine knowing. Not as hope, but as remembrance. Assume it's done because the universe operates not by hesitation, but by perfect orchestration. There are no coincidences in a realm where energy is the only language and alignment is the only currency. The tree does not question if the sun will rise. The ocean does not fear if the tide will return. In the same way, you must walk with the conviction of the stars radiating, not because they try, but because they are. You were not born to beg life to work in your favor. You were born to remember that life already is in your favor. The moment you feel the true desire in your heart, it is not a request, it is a revelation. The ego insists you must hustle for your worth, that you must earn your joy, strive endlessly to become something more. But the soul says gently, be still, assume it is already yours. Not in arrogance, but in alignment, not in entitlement, but in truth. Because the moment you doubt your wholeness, you separate yourself from the flow of all things, and the flow never withholds it, only mirrors. So if you approach life from absence, it reflects absence. But when you walk as though the miracle has already occurred, life bows to your certainty. To assume it's done is not to ignore the present, it is to honor it so deeply that you feel the seeds of the future already taking root beneath your feet. You do not plant a seed and doubt it every day. You water it, you trust the sun, you let the earth do what it was designed to do. You do not open the soil with worry, you simply trust the invisible. This is the wisdom of faith, not blind belief in a distant deity, but intimate trust in the unfolding intelligence of the now. Every breath is proof that something greater is orchestrating your existence. Every beat of your heart is a reminder that you are being carried. So breathe as though the path is already paved. Walk as though the answer is already within you. Speak as though your voice is a vessel for something divine. There is no need to grasp, no need to prove, no need to strive. Just align. Align with the version of yourself that knows it is already done, that knows the vision in your heart is not a fantasy, but a memory of what is waiting to unfold. The Tao does not rush, yet all things are accomplished. It is not through force that mountains rise, nor through pressure that flowers bloom. And yet the modern mind races, panics, pushes. It mistakes effort for power, but true power is in the stillness that precedes all creation. In the silent knowing that you and the divine are not separate forces, you are co-authors of the same unfolding. And in this unfolding, nothing is missing, nothing is late, nothing is denied. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not waiting for life to begin. Life began the moment you said yes to being here. And in this moment, life is answering you. Not always in the way the ego desires, but always in the way the soul needs. Assume it's done and let the outcome find you in your peace, not your pursuit. Do not mistake stillness for stagnation. Do not confuse surrender with passivity. When you assume it's done, you move differently, not with desperation, but with devotion. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer grasp, you give. You no longer fear, you trust. And this trust becomes a magnet for miracles. Not because you are manipulating outcomes, but because you are aligned with what is already true. The energy of assumption is the energy of source. It is the frequency of completion. When you embody it, you do not speak from hope, you speak from certainty. You do not act from lack, you act from fullness. The universe does not respond to words alone, it responds to the vibration beneath them. And when your vibration says it is done, life rearranges itself to match that statement. So speak as the healed, act as the whole, live as the blessed, not because you are pretending, but because you are remembering. You are remembering that there is no delay in the realm of spirit. There is only divine timing, and divine timing is not about waiting, it's about preparing your inner world to receive what is already on its way. The moment you declare it done, not with your mouth, but with your energy, the universe whispers, yes, not someday, now. But to live in the now, you must release the mind's addiction to the not yet. You must die to the version of yourself that thrives on becoming and awaken to the one who thrives on being. You are not an architect of your future, you are the embodiment of it. And your embodiment is the prayer. Not kneeling, but knowing. Not asking, but allowing. Not wishing, but witnessing. Assume it's done, and let that assumption be your altar. Let every step you take be a hymn of trust. Let every breath be a chant of gratitude. Let every thought align with a vibration of completion. Because when you believe it's already yours, the world responds accordingly. People appear, doors open. Circumstances shift, not because you forced it, but because you surrendered to what already is. You stepped into the sacred rhythm, and in that rhythm, all things move with grace. The birds do not wake and wonder if they will find the sky. They simply sing. The rivers do not question if they will reach the sea. They simply flow. You, too, are meant to live this way in harmony with the unseen, in alignment with your inner knowing. Assume it's done, and you will stop grasping for signs. You will become the sign. You will no longer need to be reassured by the world because your energy will reassure you. Your frequency will become your evidence. And when the mind rises with fear, when doubt attempts to reclaim the throne, do not fight it, smile at it, bless it, but do not become it. Return to the quiet place inside you where the truth always lives. What is meant for you cannot miss you. What is aligned with your soul will find you. What you desire with the purity of your heart is not a goal. It is a glimpse of what is already coming into form. So let the waiting end here, not because the world has changed, but because your awareness has. Let the striving end here, not because you gave up, but because you woke up. Let the fear dissolve, not because you silenced it, but because you stopped believing it. And let the truth rise not in words, but in presence. The truth that you are not here to beg for your life to begin. You are here to realize it already has. So assume it's done. Live from the energy of the answered prayer. Speak from the place where the miracle has already happened, and let your being become a living declaration of trust. Because when you trust, truly trust, the universe no longer needs to test you. It joins you, and together, you and life create the sacred unfolding that was never waiting. It was only waiting for you to remember. And now you have ChatGPT Danoi. And now that you have remembered, you must walk as if the stars themselves etched your path in the fabric of eternity. Let your steps be sacred, not because they lead somewhere greater, but because they are the unfolding of greatness itself. You are not on a journey toward wholeness. You are the journey. You are the wholeness. You are the unfolding light manifest in motion. Let this knowing not rest as concept, but awaken as vibration in your very cells. For to live as though it is done, you must become the echo of its completion. Do not ask the world to confirm your vision. Do not beg for signs from the reluctant winds. Your soul is the sign. Your breath is the evidence. When the heart beats with unwavering conviction, life listens. The unseen bends with reverence toward the clarity of your inner atmosphere. There is no resistance in truth, only the dissolving of what was never yours to carry. Let that be your mantra. I do not chase, I reveal. I do not pursue, irradiate. Move through this life as the moon moves through the night, not demanding attention, yet impossible to ignore. The moon never explains its phases, nor apologizes for its shadows. It simply reflects light, faithfully, silently, completely. You too must shine without needing the world to applaud. You must become so anchored in your essence that the external becomes nothing but a canvas upon which your inner knowing paints. Assume it's done, and suddenly time loses its grip. You no longer pace through days like a prisoner longing for release. You move as a sovereign soul, already free. The moments stretch with softness. The urgency dissolves into grace. Patience is no longer a waiting game. It becomes a sacred stillness, a deep breath in which the eternal is already present. In this state, life no longer needs to rush toward you. It gently arrives because it is met with peace. And oh, what a power there is in meeting life with peace. Not passivity, but presence. Not apathy, but awareness. When you release the script, you allow the symphony. When you cease striving for perfect notes, the music begins to play through you. Life is not asking you to control its rhythm. It is asking you to dance, barefoot, unarmored, unafraid. So let your certainty be quiet like a mountain under the moonlight. Let it be vast, unshakable, and free from the need to be seen. The truth does not shout. It does not market itself. It simply is. And in your being, in your undisturbed silence, that truth is revealed not because you earned it, but because you stopped resisting it. Assume it's done, and the gates open not out there, but within. The locks click not because you found the right key, but because you remembered the door was never locked to begin with. The greatest illusions are not those of the world, but of the self, believing it must be more, have more, prove more. But you, dear soul, are not here to accumulate. You are here to remember. To remember that joy is not the destination, it is the permission to be here fully. That peace is not the reward, it is the natural state beneath the noise. That love is not the goal, it is the soil from which all truth grows. When you live from this remembrance, there is nothing to fix, only things to feel. Nothing to chase, only truths to trust. There will be moments when the mind returns with doubt, whispering its ancient stories of not yet, not enough, not possible. Let it come, and then let it pass, like wind through open branches. You are not the thought. You are the awareness that welcomes and releases it with the same compassion. This is the true art of assuming it's done, not clinging to certainty, but resting in the quiet knowing that nothing real can be threatened. You begin to speak less and listen more not to others, but to the still voice beneath your ribs, the one that has never lied. You begin to act not from effort, but from alignment, where each gesture feels like an echo of something sacred. You begin to pray not with words, but with attention, washing a dish, holding a gaze, breathing deeply. Every act becomes a confirmation. It is done, it is done, it is done. And when you walk this way, something exquisite unfolds, not only within you, but around you. The people you meet feel it, not through your words, but through your energy. They soften, they remember. They exhale in your presence because your presence carries the frequency of home. not because you are superior, but because you are surrendered. So surrender more deeply. Surrender not to life as you wish it to be, but to life as it already is. In this surrender, you do not lose yourself. You find the self that was never in danger. You find the part of you that has always known the way, the part that doesn't need maps or timelines or guarantees. It only needs your yes. Say yes. Yes to the unknown. Yes to the unseen. Yes to the divine orchestration that you do not need to understand to trust. Say yes and walk as one who carries the sacred secret in their step, that it was never about striving. It was always about remembering. It was always about allowing. It was always about becoming still enough to hear the whisper, it is already done. And when you say yes with your whole being, not from obligation, but from surrender, you will feel something ancient awaken within you, something older than time and softer than sound. It is a remembrance of your eternal nature, the soul's gentle affirmation that you have never been separate, never been late, never been wrong for one breath of your life. The path is always curved toward your awakening, even when it looked like loss, even when it arrived in silence, even when it shattered what you thought was you. What broke was not your life, it was the illusion. And in its absence, the light returns. Assume it's done, and the world becomes a reflection instead of a measurement. You no longer use outer events to assess your value. You no longer place your peace on the altar of achievement. The applause grows quiet. The comparisons fade. And what rises in their place is a holy steadiness, a rhythm that moves with the pulse of the divine. You do not have to be extraordinary in the eyes of others. You only have to be true in the gaze of your soul. Let the others run. Let them chase the wind and gather accolades like leaves in autumn. You be the tree, rooted, present, unshaken. The tree does not need the wind's approval to stand tall. It does not fear the changing seasons. It simply leans into them, trusting that what falls away was never meant to stay. You too must allow the falling. Let the identities drop. Let the masks disintegrate. Let the old stories echo one last time before they dissolve into the sacred soil of your becoming. Because what is being born in you cannot be built with ego. It can only be revealed in silence. It cannot be chased into existence. It must be allowed to bloom. And bloom it will when the soil is no longer poisoned by doubt, when you stop speaking to the world from your wounds and begin to speak from your wellspring. There is a difference. One demands attention, the other radiates it. One cries out for validation, the other invites remembrance. Speak now from the wellspring. Let every word be dipped in truth. Let every gesture ripple with calm. Let every choice declare, I am whole, and I walk as if the dream has already unfolded. And it has. In a dimension deeper than thought, beyond the veil of logic, it has already unfolded. Not in potential, not in possibility, but in the eternal present where all things are one. The you who waits is an echo of the you who already is. The longing is the map, not the gap. And so when your body hungers for more, do not interpret it as lack. See it as a sacred signal that the feast is already set, and your only task is to align with the table. Do you see now? You are not here to ask the world to feed you. You are here to remember that you are the banquet. You are the nourishment. You are the fulfillment you once begged for in the dark. And when you assume it's done, you stop knocking on doors that were never yours. You walk through the doorway of your own being and find the room you've always been searching for. And there, in the quiet cathedral of your own awareness, you kneel not in defeat, but in reverence. You realize that life was never withholding anything from you. It was waiting for you to come home, waiting for you to look not with eyes of striving, but with eyes of surrender, waiting for you to become what you already are, the blessing, the answer, the light. It is no longer about what you get. It is about what you give from that knowing. And the most sacred gift you can offer this world is your own embodied truth. You do not need to convince anyone. You only need to radiate. You only need to be fully, authentically, unapologetically, as the one who knows it is done. It has always been done. And as you breathe this in, not just into your lungs, but into the marrow of your being, you begin to sense the orchestration, the perfect weaving of every pain and every joy, the divine intelligence behind every detour, every silence, every inexplicable grace. There is no wasted sorrow, no superfluous moment. All of it, even the ache, especially the ache, was sculpting you into one who could carry the frequency of the answered prayer. You were not just being prepared for the blessing, you were being shaped into the blessing itself. And now, Now you walk as that. Not louder, not faster, but deeper. You walk with the gravity of someone who knows the truth, not as concept, but as experience. The kind of truth that doesn't need defending, because it lives quietly in every cell like a hidden ember that warms the whole room without ever asking to be seen. This is the energy of completion, not the end. The beginning beyond beginnings. The place where you no longer live in anticipation, but in embodiment. Not chasing, but channeling. Not proving, but allowing. You, who have always been the miracle, now remember what it feels like to live as one. Not in performance, in presence. Not in ambition, in alignment. And when you forget, as you will, for the world is loud and the ego persuasive, come back here. Come back to this breath, this knowing, this moment, where nothing is missing and everything is here. Assume it's done, and let your life become the living proof. And as you live from this vibration of completion, your presence becomes a doorway, an invisible opening through which others glimpse their own infinite nature. You no longer speak to be heard, but to awaken remembrance in those still caught in the trance of becoming. You no longer walk to reach a destination, but because the rhythm of your soul moves in harmony with life itself. You are no longer asking for a sign, you are the sign. The walking embodiment of a life already answered. There is a profound stillness in those who carry this, knowing not a silence of absence, but a silence filled with sacred weight. You begin to feel time differently. No longer a river dragging you forward, but a spacious sea upon which you gently float. You're not racing, you're receiving. You are not in competition with anyone, not even yourself. For how can one compete when the outcome has already been received in the field of grace? Let your days be filled not with urgency, but with reverence. Let each morning be a homecoming, each evening a soft bow to the mystery that holds you. You don't need to manifest anything by force. Your presence is the manifestation. Your serenity is the magnet. You are not attracting through tactics, but through truth. The more aligned you become, the more magnetic your life grows without effort, without striving, without needing anyone to understand. And this is the quiet revolution. When you no longer ask the world to reflect your worth, and instead you offer your essence as a gift, not to gain approval, not to secure love, but because love has become your native tongue. When you assume it's done, you stop bargaining with the universe. You stop trading your joy for future outcomes. You simply give. You simply love. You simply are. The energy of assumption is not built on fantasy. It is rooted in the most unshakable reality of all, that you are made of the same breath that breathes stars into being. There is no negotiation in the stars, no hesitation in the sunrise. And so, there must be no doubt in your own becoming, not because you are forcing belief, but because you are surrendering to what never needed your permission to be true. This is not a life of waiting. This is a life of devotion. Devotion to your breath, devotion to your stillness, to devotion to the truth that whatever stirs your heart with longing is not some distant reward. It is your soul's reflection calling you inward. The dream was not placed in you as a tease. It was placed as a compass. And when you follow it, not with panic, but with presence, it reveals its petals one by one, like a flower unafraid to open beneath the sun. The more you rest in this knowing, the more you begin to see through the world's illusions. You see through urgency, through scarcity, through the myth of more. You understand that abundance is not about possession, it is about perception. You see that security is not built through control, it is felt through connection. You realize that joy is not postponed until things are right, it is remembered when you are real. To assume it's done is not to deny reality, it is to see a higher reality woven through the fabric of all things. The seen and the unseen, the known and the mysterious, the path and the pause. You learn to bless the unknown, not because it makes sense, but because it is sacred. You learn to trust the delays, not as obstacles, but as orchestration. You have remembered that there was never anything to chase, only everything to allow. And now, beloved soul, you allow. And now, allow this truth to settle into the marrow of your being, not as concept, but as communion. Let it become the ground upon which you walk, the air that enters your lungs, the vibration that hums through every gesture, every breath, every silence. For when you assume it's done, there is no longer a need to press forward. You become the presence the moment has been waiting for. You are no longer the seeker on the road. You are the road itself, paved in grace, winding gently through the hills of sacred remembrance. You are no longer waiting for the light. You are the light casting its quiet radiance on the shadows that once frightened you. and the world around you begins to soften, not because it has changed, but because your gaze has. You see with eyes that no longer judge but bless. You hear with ears that no longer crave noise but welcome silence. You speak not to be understood but to offer peace. This is not a victory you win. It is a surrender you allow, a gentle laying down of every false need to become, every worn-out desire to be more. And as you lay them down, something miraculous happens. You do not shrink, you expand. You do not disappear. You dissolve into something greater. You become vast. You become still. You become the space in which life moves, unhurried, unburdened, unbound. And now you feel it not as a fleeting insight, but as a deep, steady rhythm pulsing through the center of your chest. That you were never broken, that you never needed fixing. That every detour, every delay, every unanswered prayer was guiding you to this soft arrival right here, right now, in this breath, in this silence, where all of life converges not in a destination, but in a state of being. You no longer chase the mountain. You sit in its presence. You no longer fight the river. You float with it. You no longer plead with the stars. You shine alongside them, remembering your own ancient fire. You have dropped the armor. You have stepped out of the costume. You have bowed not to defeat, but to divinity. And as you rise from that bow, you rise not as someone with more answers, but as someone with deeper trust. You no longer need to hold the plan, you are held by the plan. You no longer demand to see the way you walk it in the dark, guided by the lamp within. And with every step, the earth seems to rise to meet your feet, whispering, yes, 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 yes to the unfolding, yes to the mystery, yes to the sacred rhythm that breathes your name in the wind and etches it into the stars. You are not an accident of the cosmos, you are the intention behind it. You are not lost, you are loved into being. You are not late, you are right on time for your own becoming. So trust what stirs in you. Trust what you cannot yet name. Trust the still voice that tells you without words that the garden has already bloomed within you. There is no need to seek the fruit. You are the tree, rooted in being, reaching with grace, feeding the world not through striving but through presence. And this is your homecoming. This is the sacred rest you've longed for. Not the end of the journey, but the end of forgetting. Not the closing of a chapter, but the opening of your eyes. To the truth that needs no proving. To the love that needs no permission. To the light that was never lost. It is done. It was always done. And now you remember